I'm Evelyn, and I'm a geoholic.
Hey, mama said the way you move gonna make you sweat, gonna make you groove.
Love it.
Good morning, Geoholics.
Right?
Here we
I mean, there is nothing that gets you jazzed up like some Zeppelin in the morning, right?
So good, so good. Obviously one of the best rock and roll bands of all time.
I mean, without a doubt.
No question about it. All right, here we are, episode 191.
191. We are cooking along.
We really are, we really are. Hey, real quick, I think this is the first time we've recorded since we were at the RE Plus conference, right?
It is. It is.
So
a little download on that.
Quick recap. First of all, massive event that was in Las Vegas last weekend that we were able to attend and record some really cool interviews. From what I understand, over 40,000 attendees.
Wait, 40?
That's what I heard. Yeah, the final numbers.
The final number was 40,000
40,000 attendees.
I believe it.
I do too. Unfortunately, we were situated in a not so great spot.
Wasn't as heavy traffic.
It wasn't. Not even close, but we still were able to manage some really good interviews.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was
and that
good, good stuff.
episode will be dropping probably the next week or so.
Yeah.
So excited about that. Had a great time, nonetheless.
Yeah, got to catch up with our good friend TK.
We did, and of course, amazing host as always.
Oh yeah, he overdid as usual.
Took us out for a really nice dinner. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Drank some great whiskey, some mezcal.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Producer Sean smoked a cigar.
I did.
Had his best Mad Men look going.
It was smoked a cigar at a bar.
It was amazing.
Yeah. We were on the like the 30th floor or something. It was really cool.
Freaking cool.
Yeah.
What a view. It was awesome. Quick Energeo update. We will be at Energeo here in about 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah. We're leaving in 2.
Yes. Insane. It's
I know.
3 weeks from today.
I am not prepared.
2 weeks from today we leave.
Right.
In Berlin. Oh my gosh. And real quick, I'm not sure when this episode is going to get released, but I do need to promote this on our social media. There is a code. If you use this code, it's IG23-GEHOLICS. You get a free ticket to the exhibit hall.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So anybody listening, if you're still looking for last minute tickets, use that code and you'll be in like Flint, as they say.
Outstanding.
Yeah. Yep. What else? What else is new?
What's new with you since?
What's new with me?
Yeah.
You know what? This past weekend, because I traveled 2 weeks in a row, and for me, as I'm getting older, it takes me a little longer to kind of recover from stuff like that. So
Sure.
This last weekend, I literally shut it down for like 24 hours straight, like no phone, no nothing. It was amazing.
How was that possible?
Well, I had the phone. I wasn't on it near as much.
Okay. Yeah. You decreased screen time by 20%, and it felt like a vacation.
It did, honestly. Yeah, but I needed it, and just had to hit the reset button. And man, I'm in a really good place, and it's early in the morning for this show, and I feel great.
That's outstanding.
It's gonna be a good day. I'm gonna manifest.
I got that same feeling.
Manifesting a great day.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's new with you, man?
Much of the same, actually. Had a similar type of weekend. My wife's birthday was yesterday, so did a little bit of celebrating, a little bit of last minute gift shopping as per usual. But other than that, it's been a nice little week.
And you pulled it off, I'm sure.
Pulled it off without a hitch.
Well, happy birthday to the lovely Lexi.
Yes, happy birthday.
Look forward to hanging out with you guys in Berlin here in a couple weeks.
We're gonna get a lot of good times.
Man, oh man, we're either gonna come back better friends or wanting to kill each other. One of the two.
Yeah, better friends or with strict boundaries established.
Or if in 3 weeks there's no more Geoholics, you know why.
Right. Exactly.
All right, tell us about the opening number.
Well, guys, probably without a doubt my personal favorite band. I think this is the third time we've had them on, Led Zeppelin. That was a song called Black Dog. I'll go through this a little bit. Formed in 1968. Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones, John Bonham, one of the best-selling artists of all time, probably 300 million units sold. Rolling Stone called them the heaviest band of all time. Not really sure about that, but definitely the biggest band of the 70s. Unquestionably one of the greatest enduring bands in rock history. Inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1995. I pulled a couple of small little nuggets. I didn't know this. For one night, Led Zeppelin was known as the Knobs.
What the fuck?
So in 1970, Frau Eva von Zeppelin, a direct descendant of Count Ferdinand von Zeppelin, was upset over what she believed to be dishonoring of her family name by the band.
Oh
she demanded the group change their name. She got her wish. February 28, 1970, they performed as the Knobs in Copenhagen. But just about 3 hours later, everyone complained, and they were back to Led Zeppelin, and it's been that way ever since.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Did not know that.
I did not either.
Did not know that. My quick story, and we were talking about this before.
Yeah. Let's good share that.
And of course, I'm going to show my age here as usual, but I believe I was in possibly 6th or 7th grade when John Bonham died, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember when this happened because my music teacher, I was in music class, my music teacher came in sobbing that day. Like, all us kids are like, what's going on? What's going on? And she's like, one of the greatest drummers of all time died. And she's like literally crying. It was crazy.
From the reports, they say that he died of drinking the equivalent of 40 vodka shots.
40 vodka shots.
Yeah. That'll do it.
That would do anybody in, I think.
Yeah, and he was a pro and still did him in. So
it's crazy. Well, hey, amazing band. Never gonna find some. I don't think we'll ever see a band as big as them.
They had a plane.
They had a plane.
I mean, I know Drake has a plane, but they were the guys.
Yeah.
Like they bought a plane for a tour. That was just the coolest thing.
Yep. They set the standard for rock and roll.
Oh yeah.
No doubt about it.
Without a doubt.
All right, cool. Let's move on. We are in the. What are we in this week? Oh no, we're in the Wisdom Wednesdays studio this week.
It is the Wisdom Wednesday studio.
And one thing I want to mention, I'm sure if you're listening to this, you've heard of Wisdom Wednesdays. If not, go to www.wisdomwednesdays.xyz and check it out. Amazing resource for anybody interested in surveying and geospatial in general. Mm-hmm. And one other thing I want to plug is TK. He sends out I don't know, I guess maybe it's a weekly or a monthly newsletter. So if you're on his email list, you get this newsletter, and every week or every time I see it, it keeps getting better and better.
Oh yeah,
and
TK, he's gonna come with something good.
Absolutely. The last one that he sent out was just amazing, incredible content. So get on that mailing list, and I'm sure you can find it at the Wisdom Wednesdays website. Next up,
.xyz.
.xyz.
Yep.
Airworks random trivia. What do you got?
It's not very random with me. Kent thinks I'm corny for this, but I pulled some fall or autumn trivia nuggets. Did you know that only America calls it fall?
I did not.
Everybody else, it was originally called harvest.
Oh.
And then they started calling it autumn. And then some English poet in 1800s called it the fall of the leaves. And then it was kind of kitschy to call it fall. And then England went back to autumn, and America just kept fall.
Interesting.
Do you know more people fall in love than any other season?
We could talk about that for a while, I suppose.
But I actually did meet my wife in October.
I think I probably met Megan. I met her in July. It was summer.
So that means you fell in love like a month later, or was it the minute? I know she doesn't listen, so
it was.
You can be honest.
It was probably in the fall. Let's just call it the fall.
All right. You can see the brightest full moon in the fall. That's the harvest moon.
Yep.
And this one's kind of funny, maybe slightly inappropriate, but bobbing for apples was originally a courting ritual.
Oh, jeez.
I'll let your imagination
go
with that one. And finally, the fall leaf colors are caused by sugar. And the color in the leaves is based on how much sugar is in the leaves.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I learned something today.
Look at that.
I knew it was going to be a good
Every single time you give me shit about, that's a stupid topic, and then every single time you're like, that's really cool.
So what that says about me is I actually can relate to the stupid topics.
Maybe.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we have the Advanced Genetic Surveys Weekly Words of Wisdom.
Yeah, what you got this week?
This one's good. And again, it's going to keep us in this happy place.
Okay.
Here we go. Spread love everywhere you go. Let no one ever come to you without leaving happier.
Okay.
And I think that's going to be very appropriate for you today. You have a full day.
I do.
Manager's meeting, got to go to Tucson for
Oh,
a meeting. You're
yeah,
going to encounter a lot of people today.
And so what you're saying is I need to spread love
Spread love.
and leave everyone better than I got them.
And I think if you try really hard to do that, your day is going to be better than you could ever imagine.
Well, you said it earlier. I will manifest that today.
Love it, love it. And that quote, of course, comes from the one and only Mother Teresa.
Oh, of course.
So we had Black Dog and Mother Teresa in the same episode.
You know,
Hard to believe. Not sure how we did it, but we did. All right, next up, let's get our guest in here. Sponsored by XYHT Magazine. We have Ben Williams from Exyn Technologies. A little bit about Ben real quick. Born in Mystic, Connecticut. Attended the University of Pennsylvania. Go.
Quakers?
Yes!
Hey!
Where he achieved a BS in computer science engineering. And did you know that the University of Pennsylvania was founded by Ben Franklin in 1791?
I did know that.
Really? Yeah. How did you know that? Why would you know that?
I'm a smart guy.
All right, there you go. He was also at the Naval Nuclear Power Training Command. Where he
Who's that, Ben Franklin or this Ben?
This Ben.
Okay, got it.
He was a nuclear engineer officer. Thank you for your service.
Absolutely.
Also attended Wharton School, which is a school of business at University of Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Where he got his master's in business. He's a father, husband, combat veteran, Division I track athlete, men's league rugby player, and alpine mountaineer.
I mean, that is a lot.
Kind of a renaissance man.
It really is.
Currently the COO of Exyn Technologies, which we're going to find out a lot more about here in a minute. And he is passionate about science fiction novels and novelists, the art of listening first.
Okay.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Metalocalypse, service, sarcasm, and he is a begrudging optimist.
I like that term.
There's a lot to follow up right there in itself.
Yeah. I mean, that's a show in his bio alone.
Exactly. So, Ben, welcome to the Geoholics. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So what we do typically right now is we do an icebreaker. And this is, of course, the Trimble Pro Point icebreaker. And here's the question for you. If you could swap lives, I know Sean loves this one, with someone for a day, who would it be and what would you hope to learn or experience?
That's a cool idea. I mean, I think I grew up doing a lot of outdoor stuff, but I've sort of, left that behind a little bit with the corporate world and all the other stuff I do. So, I think it would be super interesting to be someone that does, ecological forest work off way in the woods somewhere where you're, out of contact, you don't have phone or internet or anything like that. You're doing interesting, like nature-based work, sort of out in the wild. I think that would be just one change of pace, and also just a really interesting world that I have a little bit of insight into, but it'd be a totally different life shift.
Yeah. So it sounds like you'd like to switch lives with Grizzly Adams, maybe. Modern day Grizzly Adams.
Right?
There you go.
All right. Well, thanks for that. So athletics obviously has been a huge part of your life. Talk about that just a little bit. Being a Division I track athlete, what event were you in?
Yeah, I came into college as a decathlete, and
So all of them.
Oh, yeah.
but I was neither good enough nor had enough time to train for 10 events all the way through college with everything else. So I ended up focusing on throwing the hammer and javelin, which was super fun, and got to do some really cool stuff.
I always wanted to try to throw a hammer.
I don't want to be anywhere near you when you do that.
I mean, I've always seen that. Like, that looks really cool.
And really,
and I know it's very technical, and you think you can do it, and these guys go crazy. But that's one thing. Javelin, not as much, but definitely the hammer.
It's got to be all technique.
Oh yeah, gotta be.
Got to be. Also, rugby player, alpine mountaineer.
I gotta hear about a little bit alpine mountaineer. Is that just when it snows, you just kind of walk up a hill, or give me a little bit more context on what it takes to be an alpine mountaineer?
Sure. I mean, a lot of it is basically just willingness for self-punishment. You're good at that. In the cold and you're at elevation and all that stuff. So a lot of it is just willing to push through and get to the summit, so to speak, both metaphorically and literally. And I think for me, a lot of it is that you don't get a lot of opportunities in day to day life to really sort of push yourself to physical and psychological limits.
Hmm.
And I love the opportunity to do that in a way that you also then have like a clear achievement, even though as the saying goes, the journey is as important as the destination.
Mm,
But
like it.
so a lot of this started with climbing above tree line, which is the alpine zone. And so getting above there, you're in crampons, which are the spikes on your boots, and you're roped up with a team.
Wow.
And so there's a lot to it, but it's a really, really good experience and pretty fun.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty fun, he said. For me, it doesn't sound fun.
Back to the icebreaker. I would just like to spend a day in the life of Ben.
There you go.
It's like what I would like to do.
And this Ben, not Ben Franklin.
This Ben, not Ben Franklin. Well, both I'd say, but probably this Ben.
Oh, man. Talk about this passion you have for sci-fi. Where does that come from?
Yeah, I mean, I think I grew up reading a lot of sci-fi, and initially it was probably just like an interesting escape from day to day. But as I got a little bit older, I started realizing a lot of the sci-fi novelists used this sort of the extremis of aliens or off-world or whatever to more accurately critique existing social structures and that kind of thing. And so some of the best sci-fi books are on their surface like space opera or whatever, but then very close below the surface is very pointed commentary on existing social structures and what is sort of weird or wrong with society as is. And so I've always loved that sort of duality, being able to be both totally escapist and then also bring it back to what would we do if we could do things differently, or without the sort of the history and the context of what we have now.
And I really love that because it's almost like the pass you give a sci-fi show, but it's really, pointing, making fun of somebody, but it's like, oh, it's aliens or some funky stuff. And it's like, oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
But really, it's like,
Yeah. Is there a sci-fi book or movie that, in your opinion, most parallels reality?
oh, yeah, good question.
Like the one that comes. Do you remember a movie called Soylent Green?
Oh yeah, Charlton Heston, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's when I was. Yeah, that was a weird one. That was a weird one. But is there any one that comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's I could go on for hours about this, but I think the first season of the Battlestar Galactica reboot, I think was one of the most fascinating studies of government and military and sort of character clash that I've ever seen. It's just a superbly well done season. Highly recommended to watch. I think they did a great job of really walking the line of in this again super extreme situation. What is the role of government? What is the role of military? What is the role of democracy? And it's just such a fascinating thing, and brought me back a little bit to my days in the Navy, where it was a lot of times a very specific structure, but in place because all these rules are written in blood. So it was a really fascinating show. I think that's a good one to start with.
That's interesting.
Absolutely. So as the COO of Exyn, talk about that just a little bit. I mean, we're going to dive deeper into exactly what Exyn does, but what's a typical day like for you? Maybe talk about the company culture a little bit, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of it.
Sure. So, I mean, my broad charter as the COO is to execute on the business. We have a bunch of different technical teams, some of which sit under me, some of which sit under a CTO that runs especially the sort of research-oriented portions. And so, generally, the idea is, how do we build a successful commercial operation around this core technology, and making sure that our work, our engineering, our processes, our people are all revolving around customer centricity. So, what does the customer need? What is the best experience for that end user? and how do we make sure that the things we're developing fit into that vision and make sure that they're going. So on a day-to-day basis, a lot of it revolves around block and tackling, just making sure that the systems get out to customers, making sure we're building them right, making sure we're developing the right products and all that sort of thing. I mentioned in that little the intro thing. I'm a big believer in listening first. A lot of my time is spent trying to understand, and that's both customers and employees and market at large. The better we can understand what's going on around us, the better we can take decisive and correct action the first time. And so, a lot of my time is honestly spent listening and trying to understand what's going on around me.
Me personally, I love that. I'm having this evolution about my management style, and one of those is if you get done with a meeting and you talked the most, you did it wrong.
You did it wrong. Yeah.
And I have to actively remind myself to listen, and especially when you're doing a one-on-one or a meeting with a client, and I'm talking more than they are, that's wrong. Yeah, listen first is great.
This is a big change for you.
I mean, it is a life-altering change.
I'm not saying you're a control freak.
One of the hardest things I've ever had to do.
Oh, man, that's great.
Hey, Kent, tell us about one of the OG friends of the program, Safety Apparel.
Oh my gosh, Safety Apparel and Matthew Stansberry. They have been with the Geoholics from day one. And in addition to that, they have reinvented safety apparel for surveyors with the highest quality materials and most functional and versatile vests the safety industry has ever seen.
Man, they really have. Safety Apparel offers ANSI CSA compliant, high visibility surveying construction vests and reflective traffic control gloves, hats, stickers, and patches.
In addition, they will provide you with company logos and other designs on vests, shirts, jackets, etc.
And Safety Apparel is also introducing the newest member of the Party Chief family, the Summer Yellow Class 3, with zip-off sleeves for Class 2 and Class 3 compatibility.
Check them out at safetyapparel.us and send them an email at info@safetyapparel.us with your needs specifically, and they will do their best to get you headed in the right direction. All right, well, let's dig into this. Exyn, super cool stuff you guys got going on. Talk about it a little bit. And yeah, just time for you to just talk about all things Exyn.
Yeah. So we're a software company, and we sit at the intersection of high accuracy, rapid mapping, and autonomous navigation for small robotic systems. And those two are actually very self-complementary. The better you can map your environment, the better you localize where you are as a system, then it makes it easier and more effective to navigate autonomously. And the converse is true as well. Once you are able to navigate autonomously, successfully and dependably, the more able you are to gain these high accuracy data sets in all kinds of wild environments, either inaccessible to humans or difficult or dangerous to access. And so the two of those end up becoming a really great complementary set of areas to focus on. And what that has meant to us from a product perspective is, we started out with sort of pure autonomy as the goal. And over time, as we learned more about what our end customers want out of those systems, we ended up focusing more and more time on the data outputs of those, capturing insights rapidly, accurately, and getting it to the point where they can make a decision based on it as fast as possible. And so that's informed a lot of our design decisions, the self-contained nature of the system. So we operate GPS denied and no prior map required. It's an entirely self-contained system. So you can build these models out in the field. You don't need to connect to the internet or the cloud or anything like that. You can make informed decisions right there as the team has collected information. And so I think that's been a big help for us. We started out in the underground mining world, and now we're doing a lot of sort of broader geospatial data capture. So that's kind of how we started out, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And where is that going now as far as applications? You started underground mining. What other industries are you getting into, or are you seeing adding value?
So right now, our biggest areas are in sort of the critical infrastructure, rapid capture on inspections and monitoring, construction, sort of the as-built building monitoring and upgrades is a big one too. I'm sure the folks listening are quite familiar with the idea of mobile mapping and rapid mapping. And so in this kind of context, where we take that to the next level is that we do a lot of sensor fusion. You can collect these richer data sets. So instead of getting a simple point cloud, you fuse visual, radiation, gas, temperature, whatever. All of these sensors can be fused in real time. So you get these very, very rich data sets, which allows you to do a lot more in terms of removing people from difficult or dangerous environments, doing it quickly, effectively, and the sort of the end goal for us is to have physical enterprises, industrial enterprises, remove the need for people to be just kind of walking around their systems. And instead, you have distributed robots taking in all of the information that you need to operate the business. It gives you access to the sort of the foundations of big data, and then applying things like neural nets, machine learning, predictive analytics, all of those things you can't even do unless you can get the data in the first place. We fill in all those gaps.
So do hardware manufacturers come to you and you help them solve problems, or is it more of a consumer comes to you with a problem and you help them? What does the business model look like?
So it's mostly large, heavy industry. So think of the mining world, the construction world, survey teams that do survey as a service, folks that are out doing data collection for the construction or building monitoring world. All of those are areas where we've found a lot of uptake. Similarly, in the sort of civil government world, where there's a lot of sensitive information to gather, but they want to do it quickly and effectively and not have it sort of transition off into some distant server. There's a lot of applications there as well where data control is really important, and people are now a lot more sensitive to control of their data and understanding where it sits and who owns it and all that sort of thing. So in the grand scheme of things, we are usually working with industrial clients. The end users are actually pretty varied. We started with mostly survey teams across all these industries, but now we're getting to the point where operations folks that want to be able to optimize the layout or the empty spaces in their facilities, logistics, trying to do cycle counting or mapping out the physical environment so that they are better utilizing it. A lot of more expanded use cases, and that's honestly kind of the most fun part about this is that when you put an autonomous system or a rapid mapping system into the hands of an end user, they will often do things that you didn't think of at all, and then we'll come back and say, "Hey, were we allowed to do that?" And you go, "I don't know, but let's see what
Right.
the outcome was and
So cool.
whether that can be a product."
Yeah, and I saw on your website, you like it looks like you're teaming with like the Boston Dynamics dog, and with like a SLAM unit mounted on it, and
Yep.
just some really really cool things. And I guess that kind of goes back to the whole sci-fi tie. This robotics thing. What are you seeing on that side? What's next?
So, there's a lot of close to the cart, so to speak, things that are really obvious benefits for industry. Being able to automate things that are otherwise people walking around. There's some obvious cost benefits there, and removing people from difficult or dangerous environments is great, and we can do that in a lot of scenarios. Where I think it gets super interesting is where you get a little bit further down the line. You think 5, 10, 15 years down, and if you're at the point where you don't have to account for people in a given environment, that allows you to design it totally differently. Right now, if you think about underground mines, which is an area we know a lot about, right now there are so many requirements for how to build those because of the safety systems. You've got to have shelters that are partway down. You've got to think about continuous ventilation so that there's not collection of gases. You have to wait after a blast a certain amount of time for things to clear out. There's all of these requirements, most of them around safety. So if you didn't have to account for a single person in an underground mine, all of a sudden you might go, well, actually the best, most efficient way is not to have these huge tunnels with massive trucks. Maybe it's really narrow tunnels. Maybe it's like 3 foot by 3 foot with these autonomous little, snake things that go down and get the ore and come back out. And you can get kind of a blank slate for designing a much more efficient structure doing that way. It's the same thing with space travel, where once you remove people from a spacecraft, it gets order of magnitude cheaper. You can operate in a lot more different environments. It opens up the economics for you to do different stuff. So I think the same thing is going to be true for industrial environments. Same thing is going to be true for building and maintaining things in the infrastructure world. Removing the need for a lot of safety overhead because people aren't going to be there, then makes it way more economical to do interesting things that we can't even do right now. We can't contemplate because the cost is too prohibitive.
Yeah, it also makes me think about when I was at a previous company, we had this company come in, unnamed company come in and do a demo of like an exoskeleton that a human could wear and allow you to like lift more. I mean, there's a safety aspect of it. And talk about sci-fi.
Oh, yeah.
Bizarre.
That movie where they're all in those like big, what was that? Like a Tom Cruise movie or something where everyone had that big robot thing and then everyone fought each other. And
Right,
yeah.
Talking about the Edge of Tomorrow?
Yes, Edge of Tomorrow.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, that's a great one. No, it's like a really interesting category, right? Because it's easy, I think, for especially folks like us in industry to sort of say, the next step, pretty obvious. There's a lot of things we can do. We can see immediately the advantages for things that we're doing in the next year or two. And a lot of that is just making it happen. Getting beyond that is a little bit more difficult because it is a little more around, what do I think are the knock-on effects from us delivering this year, competitors catching up or trying to catch up, and where is the industry going to be in 5 years? And then thinking about our industry is going to change independent of us. Like a lot of these heavy industries are not always viewed as the most sexy, but they're not going away. These are all like fundamental to the basic economy. So thinking about how they're going to transform is really interesting, and it's kind of a fun way to think through. How does technology affect the day to day for someone in in the survey world or in the in the operations world? Like, what can you do with the information you're getting and transform the way that you work? It's really fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it. What role does AI and VR play in Exyn's development?
So, I mean, our core technology is in the AI space. The autonomous vehicle navigation stuff is all in that category of AI. We don't really play on the like the Chat GPT side of things, the large language models. That's a lot more about sort of written language understanding and insight generation. But where those same general ideas apply is in classification and acting on classification. And what that means for us is, if a system is navigating through, let's say, a construction site, and you are able to classify parts of that environment, you say, oh, I see a dust cloud got kicked up. If I am not doing any work to classify the environment, that shows up as an obstacle to the robot and to an operator if they don't know any better. And so then if you can classify that and say that is dust, that is not a physical barrier, but it is a difficult safety thing, so you can move through it, but just go slowly, then that changes the way you interact with your environment. More and more of these little elements that help the robot itself understand the environment becomes a big, big game changer in how you deploy those systems. Because if you think about an autonomous system is only useful if you can trust that it's fine on its own. If
Right.
it requires you to kind of jump in and help it every 10 minutes, doesn't really help. And so the more you can trust it to be resilient to those sort of oddball things in the environment, the more likely you are to actually use and deploy and take advantage of that capability. So I think the big sexy leaps in like now it's autonomous for XYZ then becomes a challenge of, is it only working 50% of the time, or can you trust that 90% of the time it's gonna work? And so a lot of that is just working through all of these scenarios and doing the work to build classification engines and have it impact how the autonomous system reacts to those worlds. And so I think that's where we've spent the last couple of years focusing on that aspect of it, because we want the systems to be usable and resilient and for people to be able to take advantage of the autonomy in a lot of environments. And I think that's where most of the actual work of deploying these things comes in. And a lot of it is working with customers, right? we don't pretend to know all the environments people are operating in. And a lot of times they'll go, hey, can we try it in this area? And we go, sure, just send us the data so we know how to improve it, right? And so it's a really fascinating cycle to go through of continuing to push the boundaries and continuing to try and improve resilience and capacity of those systems.
Sure. It makes me think about Waymo. Are you familiar with Waymo? So
Yeah.
the autonomous or driverless vehicles. Phoenix is obviously one of the cities where it's pretty prevalent. Sean's a big user of Waymo.
I'm a Waymo user. Yeah.
So this has got to strike a chord with you.
Yeah, and it goes to and I relate it, what Ben was saying, to the, the Waymos are currently having trouble with like construction sites, or they just kind of don't know how to handle the flagging and some of that, so it kind of slows down, and sometimes it just stops.
Oh, wow.
And which is kind of like the worst case scenario, because that's the last place you want to stop. But it's more about, and that's what my question to Ben was, is how is it about getting more experience? You mentioned like the dust cloud. Like, do you need to deploy these things and let it work itself out and learn more to be more effective, or can you preload that? Does it have to do it on its own? Is my question, or do you have to put it in a place to force it to learn those conditions?
So both are sort of valid approaches. We have tried to build our system so that it can handle things universally, which is more work up front, obviously. But to that point, we don't want to have to go to every specific scenario and let it muddle around for a while until it figures it out. So we try and do as much of that up front as we can. In a lot of cases, there's variation in the industrial environments we work in, but there's also a lot of consistency. Like dust in a mine is pretty similar from a classification to dust in a factory floor or a construction site. Same thing, there's hanging wires in any of these environments. Those are generally pretty similar. So you can build kind of a baseline that covers most of the areas that you're thinking about, and we don't have to just sort of let things muddle around in the environments continuously to get there. We do ask our customers oftentimes to capture data sets from some of these environments that are kind of on the edge of what we know the system can do, so that we can try and be proactive about developing those edge case handlers. Most of the time successful, sometimes not, but we've been able to get a lot of really great data sets. And we've got some awesome partners in industry that are helping us push the bounds there. So we couldn't really do it without them as well.
So can you give us an example? I mean, this just made me think, like, what's the biggest curveball in a setting that has happened in one of these that have been deployed? You mentioned the dust cloud, but what's the one that you just could not predict, and as much as you can share, but can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, so we had this one that took forever to figure out. Basically, there were little microclimates being formed in pockets of underground caves, and it took forever to figure out, because it would transition quickly, and it would turn from one temperature to another temperature really fast, and there would be like a fog layer that you couldn't quite see before it, and then you cross it and you're like, well, that's a problem.
Right.
And so we eventually figured out ways to detect rapidly, and when it seems like a failure is imminent, then it like lands itself or it removes itself from that scenario, and that's been pretty effective. But that was a really hard ID, because a lot of times when you're in those environments, you can't put people there because it's right after some dangerous work has gone on, so you don't really want people there in the first place. That's why you have an autonomous system.
It's kind of the idea.
Yeah, and so we had to just sort of lose a bunch of systems before we were able to get enough data to kind of solve the problem. But now it seems like we're on the other side of that in a lot of ways, and so we're not losing systems that way, and we've been able to get through it, and it ended up making a much more resilient system. So it was good.
Yeah, I can picture the little robot drone going through the tunnel, and all of a sudden the humidity doubles and the temperature drops by 40 degrees, and then it just and runs into the wall, and you're like, oh crap.
Yep.
I wonder how much longer it'll be since we have driverless cars, pilotless commercial planes.
Let's just say I hope that's a little after my lifetime. I'm on board for Waymo because my feet are close to the ground.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, and I know it's all autonomous, and the pilots are up there, drinking coffee and playing pinochle. But I
Yeah.
just I don't know. I just like the idea of somebody that can grab the wheel.
Yep.
Interesting. I'm almost the opposite.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I think it would almost be easier in some ways to develop autonomous planes or pilotless planes than it is a vehicle because of the amount of, I don't know,
Regulation.
well, regulation for sure, and just there's so much to avoid in a car versus in a plane. In a plane, you got to deal with weather conditions and blah 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 blah. But
you remember the Sullinger movie when he landed the plane in the Hudson?
Oh, yeah,
I've
yeah,
seen
yeah,
all
yeah,
these clips on it, and
Yeah.
they part of the movie was they tried to tell him after the fact, of course, that hey, in all of the models, when the birds hit the engines and the engines shut down, the model says that you could have made it back to the one of two airports in plenty of time.
Mhm.
And his argument was, well, yeah, that's great if you knew what was going to happen.
Sure.
But somebody has to, that happens. The engine shut down. You take 5 seconds to figure out what to do.
Right.
That processing. I really want a gray-haired guy like Sully to do it instead of
Yeah.
an AI robot that maybe hasn't quite learned
Yeah,
how to
I
adapt
get
in
it.
time.
Yeah, that makes sense. So who are some of your users, your customers that you can talk about?
Sure. I mean, one of our earliest customers, we're doing a ton of work with them is Dundee Precious Metals. It's a mining company. I think they're technically based in Canada, but we work with their mine in Chelopech, Bulgaria. That was our
Oh.
first deployed autonomous system, and they've been users for almost 5 years now, I think.
Wow.
So they've been big champions right from the get go. We've got a bunch of other great customers across a bunch of continents. We announced recently a partnership with CR Kennedy, who's a big distributor in Australia. They've been huge champions for us as well. They invested in our last round, and they've been a big help getting us into some of these sort of secondary markets outside of purely mining, because that's where we started with them as well. But they do a lot of work in the geospatial world. They do a lot of work outside of mining and construction and infrastructure. So they've been a huge help for us as well, getting us moving. Similarly, we work with Trimble quite a bit. We were at their Trimble Dimensions conference last year. We demonstrated the Spot Boston Dynamics Spot autonomy with them at their conference. We've now had a chance to go out to some customer sites with them and get their distributors spun up on these concepts as well. So they've been a great partner for us all the way through. It's been really fun.
Yeah, we probably saw you there.
Yes, I believe we saw you there.
Yeah,
I know I saw the
remember,
the dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
I am really excited about this next friend of the program, GeoSearch. They are new for 2023. Sean, tell us about GeoSearch.
GeoSearch is a company specialized in geospatial recruiting and staffing services.
You know what? I can't believe it's taken 3 years, but they are recruiters that have a passion for matching job seekers for job openings in the geospatial industry specifically, including job titles such as GIS analysts, GIS developers, LiDAR specialists, land surveyors, as well as management and sales positions.
Yeah, that's really great. They have a network of industry contacts and a thorough understanding of the geospatial job market. Really allows them to efficiently connect companies with the talent that they are looking to hire.
And we know that it is a competitive world right now in the geospatial profession. This company offers a variety of services for both job seekers and employers, including job search assistance, resume writing, I might have to call them, and interview preparation for job seekers and employer branding and sourcing for companies. How can folks find out more?
Just go to geosearch.com.
So is there a hardware component to it? Are you guys developing like UAVs? Is that part of it, or is it strictly software?
So at the end of the day, we are on a hardware system, so there's always a bit of a hardware component. But we've tried to stay fairly hardware agnostic. We've integrated on a dozen different drones, a few different ground vehicles, We have a handheld system that you can, put on a backpack or put on the front of a car or truck or whatever. So we've stayed fairly hardware agnostic, but there's integration stuff that we do. Almost everything on the hardware side is off the shelf, but there's some little bits that we optimize to make sure that the quality of the end product is exactly where we need it, of course. But we work with lots of drone companies, a bunch of different robotics manufacturers. A lot of discussions now with OEMs that want the autonomy and want the sort of the SLAM engine and the ability to build these maps quickly and effectively. And so I think you're going to see a lot of expansion platform-wise as we continue to get out to the market.
Cool. So you've had a pretty diverse career so far, with your combat experience and working for large organizations, founding startups. What are some of the lessons learned that you've encountered along the way?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, by far the biggest lesson is that communication is always the problem. Whatever you think the problem is, it's probably communication, especially in fast-moving organizations or large organizations. Almost always communication. It's really easy to interview and test and hire for people who have specific skill sets. It's really hard to test for people's ability and willingness to communicate successfully in an organization. I saw in the operational Navy, this was always a problem, and they tackled head on. It's a big focus for military is how do you communicate quickly and effectively what the objective is and what the status is. So I spent a lot of time doing that. I ran the communications department on a missile cruiser in the second Gulf War, and it was the sort of the nexus for where everything was happening, which was really interesting. But even as I then transitioned into big corporate and into startups, whenever there was a problem, usually it was just that people didn't quite understand what they were supposed to be doing. Even where it seemed at first like, oh, this guy's incompetent or this girl's not doing the right thing, usually because I didn't tell them the right objective or didn't listen when they were like, we can't do that. That's not possible, or why are we doing that? Doesn't make any sense. And so my big takeaway is all about communication. And it really revolves, I think, around being humble enough to recognize that, especially in a leadership position, I am often the problem. And assume that I'm going in wrong and that my only goal is to try and be less wrong quickly. And then you get pretty close to the goal that way.
I'm making Kent write that down because that's great. I'm usually the problem. I think if we
Why did that one strike a chord to you, Sean?
I don't know, but it goes back to the having a one-on-one with an employee and talking for 95% of it.
Yeah. So on the communication topic, I mean, first of all, I love this conversation. So do you find that your communication style, it needs to be consistent, or does it need to be adaptable?
Well, I mean, it's all about audience in a lot of cases, right? Like people from the marketing world or from the content world, live and die by how do they measure their audience and how do they make their content relevant for their audience. So to some extent, there's always that element of make sure that whatever you're trying to get across, you're saying in a way that your audience can take it in. Don't make it their problem, make it your problem. And so in that case, it's always a little bit variable. The counterpoint to that is that, especially in like a C-level position at a company that's more than 15 or 20 people, you also still need to be pretty consistent. It doesn't need to necessarily be expressed the same way, but the themes and the goals need to be consistent whenever you're talking about it. And so, you'll see really good, public company CEOs. They'll say the same thing over and over and over and over again. And it's not because they're dumb or they don't, can't think of anything else. It's because their whole goal is to make sure that people take in like 3 to 5 messages, period, and that they're not distracting from, all the other stuff. And that's a hard lesson because, we as people want to connect more specifically, but you also need to get across like very specific themes all the time. So I think it's like this sort of push and pull all the time of making it relevant and direct, and at the same time being consistent when you're talking to every single person. So it's hard.
It's hard, no doubt, and it fosters accountability.
Definitely.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most important part, right? Is even whatever you say, it doesn't matter if you don't follow through on it. So
Yeah, exactly.
Can we go back to that? You mentioned something earlier that you're a reluctant optimist.
Begrudging.
Begrudging. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the way that I would describe that is that I have ultimate faith in the gradual and overall movement of people, but individual interactions and individual people oftentimes can be horrendous or not fun. And I think the world is full of examples of bad things happening and bad things going on. It can be really easy to kind of feel overwhelmed by it, and I certainly feel that way sometimes. I'm sure you guys do too. But then when you step back a little bit and you look at sort of broad historical contexts, we've never been better. Better in terms of like the world's look, everyone can afford a TV for 70% of the world population. Like that's absurd. 100 years ago, there were zero TVs, right? It's like you think about some of these basic measures. World poverty is way less than it was 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. And it's not to say that there's not lots and lots of problems, but like I think the thing that people get really wrapped around the axle on is trying to get into like is one specific thing better or worse or whatever. And like the way I try and look at it is go, look, accept that we are all partially bad and partially good, and the only goal is to try and get a little bit better. Like, don't get into the argument of whether the historical context, people have done bad things. Yes, of course. Don't worry about it. Focus on what we can do better today. Like, whatever we can do, we can get a little bit better. So, I think that helps me kind of ground my actions so that I'm not just throwing my hands up in despair. I'm not ignoring all the historical context either. It's just like, look, let's just try and be a little bit better.
And I think first of all, Ken's smiling because he knows that I love that. We get into arguments all the time, and he's one of the Ken and I disagree sometimes, and he's one of the everything's so bad right now, and look at the news, and I'm like, whoa, let's take a step back. It's like it's pretty phenomenal, and this is still better than 10 years ago and 20 years ago, but I think it really applies to like a startup or like when you're in a growing company, because you get caught up, and I'm sure you do, and I know I do. You get caught up in the day-to-day struggles when you have to wait a second. This was 5 years ago. This was nothing. 2 years ago, it was 20% of what it is. And look, this is so great, and we're worried about the last 10% of the problems, and that dominates 90% of our thoughts and actions. And I know. You're giving me that look.
No, I'm not. I don't disagree with you. I'm trying to analyze in my brain, because you're right. I mean, I do have those days where I get caught up and I am like a optimist by nature. Right?
Sure.
But there are days, obviously, where I'm just like, what in the hell is going on in this world? But do you think it's maybe that our expectations are too high sometimes?
Well, yeah, but our expectations are too high because of how great it is. I mean. I think that it's not a self-fulfilling prophecy here, but it's our actions and thoughts are only based on what we experience today, and not necessarily 30 years ago.
Exactly. Yep.
There was a great comedy bit by I think it was Louis C.K., who I is a little bit on the rocks right now, but he did a great bit about this where he was like, think about the first time you flew in an airplane with internet Wi-Fi, and before that, it was inconceivable that you would be able to, access email or whatever on the airplane. Yeah. And then, halfway through the flight, the Wi-Fi drops out for 20 minutes, and then immediately someone's complaining about it, and he's like,
It's like,
"Come
oh,
on,
this is the worst thing that could ever possibly happen to me.
right." It's
That's
pretty
awesome.
wild.
That is funny. Um, so Wharton's 40 under 40. You were selected to be a part of that prestigious group, which is amazing. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So with that, I mean, what advice do you have for aspiring entrepreneurs?
Oh man, I mean, I think there's a lot of it that's sort of regular advice you hear a lot. Don't be afraid to be wrong, move quickly. Try and figure out what your weaknesses and your strengths are. Play to those. Surround yourself with good people. I think a lot of it also is just recognizing that there's no silver bullet. There's no kind of easy shortcut. It's going to be a lot of work no matter what. You might get super lucky, but that's luck, not that you are just some super genius. Like, it's very, very unusual for someone to have these like great immediate outcomes because you both have to be incredibly lucky, incredibly smart, right place, right time, all that stuff go right. Most of the entrepreneurs, most of the successful businesses are built off of just hard work and like some luck and being, in the right place, getting great people around you. I think a lot of people get really frustrated quickly because they buy into this sort of cult around solo genius founders, and like that helps. But the reason we hear about those is because it's really unusual. We hear a lot about Steve Jobs because he's like the one guy that figured it out, and like the other 499 CEOs in the Fortune 500 are not like that, and they were all very successful doing just hard work and getting through it and listening, learning, growing. So I think there's a lot of like make sure that you're just trying to focus on what it is you want to get done. Try and build a plan, roll with the punches a little bit. I don't know. It's not that complicated, honestly. It's just put in the work, put in the time, listen and learn.
Persistence and resilience
Ooh,
is what I'm hearing.
yeah, I like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What are you excited about? Whether it be 5 years, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years down the road, what keeps you motivated?
Oh man, well, it's interesting. I've got two young kids, and so seeing them see me, like I got to bring them in for a demonstration where we brought back to our kids at Workday, and seeing through their eyes the autonomous robots was so cool and like totally rejuvenated me for another 6 months after that, because you would have other parents come up to us and be like, "Hey, my kid said that you like talked to a robot dog." I'm like, yeah, that was at work actually. And it was this really fun way to kind of refresh my thinking, because as you say, it's easy to get kind of down on the specifics, or like we didn't hit like one particular milestone. You're like, oh man, everything's bad, but it's not. It's pretty good. And
Yeah.
so being able to kind of refresh through your kids' eyes is super cool. I think from the business perspective, we are finding some really cool use cases. We've got a lot of great momentum going into the end of the year and next year. I think it's going to be some really cool growth, and I'm really looking forward, actually, in the geospatial world specifically, because we're kind of newer to that category, but we're seeing some really great uptake and cool partners. So I'm excited to see that grow. I think it's going to be a really fun next year or two.
I've got two things on that. One, Ben has to be the best bring your dad to school
God,
day.
right?
I mean, everybody else is in there, and he's just got the coolest gadgets, and everyone else is jealous. But then that brings me to a question. Looking forward in the next few years, do you see more advancements in the technology itself, or do you see more applications in use cases?
I mean, both for sure. I think I think what you'll see publicly is expansion of use cases. I think behind the scenes, there's going to be a lot of these optimizations that are not super obvious from like a new feature perspective, but they dramatically increase resilience and the capability capacity of the platforms. I think there's a lot of that's going to be going on, because it's like out of a 10-year cycle, there's one or two really big advancements that are like, we proved we could do X, and now that's part of the product. And then the next 5 years is making it work in the real world, so that it's not just it works with an asterisk in certain specific environments. When the moon is in the right phase and you're got up on the right side of the bed, making it work every day, all day for all of the users. That's where all the hard work is, right? And so, we're in the middle of that phase for some of the newer markets, and it's exciting. Get a lot of great feedback and get a lot of new customers, early adopters. So I think that's probably where most of our efforts are. I think you're going to see one or two new products that come out next year, which will be pretty fun. So keep your ears peeled for that, I suppose.
Love it. So I got to know, you've got so many irons in the fire and so many passions and so many thoughts and ideas running through your brain any second of any day. When you meet somebody for the first time and they ask you what do you tell them?
That's a great question. I'm always guilty of way underplaying it. I usually just say I work in robotics, and then so
It's easier that way.
Yeah.
yeah. It's it's interesting, especially in I live in Philadelphia, and it's an interesting city because it's not like the Bay Area. It's not like everything is startup. There's a lot of industries here, a lot of media and finance and arts and all kinds of cool stuff. And so when I meet people, I don't want to lead in with like, well, I am the COO of a funded startup, and they're like, shut up. And so it's a lot more interesting to then sort of say, well, I work in this category. We do some cool fun stuff here. What do you do? And like, I love getting into the weeds of like what makes other people's stuff tick. I love to hear about how writers get to their thing, how musicians get through their creative process, and all that stuff is inspiring to me as well, because I think there's a lot of interrelated elements between new product creation and arts and media, and it's all pretty interrelated, I think. So I get a kick out of that.
Yeah, good stuff. What else? Anything else you want to get out there before we let you go?
Look for us at Trimble Dimensions. We will also be at Intergeo.
All right.
So look for
Awesome.
look for some Exyn folks out there.
Well, tell them to stop by the booth and hang out with the Geoholics a little bit.
Absolutely, will do. And look forward to see everyone out in the field.
All right. Well, we have one last question we always ask everyone. I'm really interested to see what your answer is. Do you have a mantra that you live by?
I'm not one sort of explicitly, but I do. We've probably covered it a couple times already, but listen first and small improvements. Focus on getting a little bit better every day. There is, to jump back to the sci-fi thing, something that I borrow regularly is from what's it called? Altered Carbon, which is a fantastic novel and became a really pretty good Netflix TV show.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And there's a particular phrase they use a lot, which resonates with me, which is get to the next screen. And it sort of comes from the video game world of like, don't worry about getting all the way through. Live to fight another day. Get to the next screen. Get moving. And that resonates a lot with me because, that idea of compound interest, 1% increases continuously, you get there pretty quick.
Good stuff.
Really good, really good. Well, hey, Ben, thank you for your time. Really, really enjoyed this. And I'd love to do it again sometime, as I know there's so much more we can talk about.
Oh, yeah, I know. We could do a round two on just the applications and use cases.
Yep, no question. All right, man. You got anything else?
Oh, I'm good, man. I'm really kind of energized for today.
It's going to be a good day. Manifest that shit.
Yeah, I love it.
That's awesome.
All right. Adding value, making friends. Check that box.
Check it.
If anyone would like to be a guest on a future show or have any topical ideas, shoot us an email at info@thegeoholics.com. Led Zeppelin Black Dog, available everywhere. Until next time, everyone, listen first.
Listen first.
You are probably the problem. Sean.
Yes.
Be less wrong quickly.
I love it.
Get to the next screen. Most importantly, be safe and healthy.